Friends, today we are diving into the story of a leader who is shaking the entire world, Ibrahim Traoré. A man not only raising his voice for Africa's rights, but boldly exposing the injustice of powerful nations like America, Britain and France. Believe it or not, even Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Traoré is destined to become one of the strongest leaders of the Muslim world, and social media is buzzing with people comparing him to Salahuddin Ayyubi. But this is just the beginning. In 2022, at just 34 years old, Traoré with his loyal military team overthrew Burkina Faso's interim president, Paul-Henri Damiba, and took control. But this coup wasn't for power alone. It was a response to a crisis. ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacks had killed thousands, displaced millions, and left the country drowning in poverty and fear. Traoré promised to fight terrorism and liberate Burkina Faso from foreign control. As soon as he took office, he kicked the French army out of the country, then strategically moved closer to Russia, forging ties with President Putin. Today, Burkina Faso is a strategic partner of Russia, and Traoré's leadership is inspiring youth across Africa. He declares that Africa's gold, uranium and resources belong to Africans, and the continent will no longer be plundered. What sets him apart further is his deep symbolic connection to history. He identifies as a descendant of Hazrat Bilal al-Habashi, making him a figure admired by the Muslim world. His influence is so strong that South Africa has taken Israel and America to the International Court of Justice, and his voice resonates on every global forum. So friends, if you want to see how a young African leader is changing the course of a nation, inspiring a continent and emerging as a global symbol of courage and justice, then stay tuned because this story will blow your mind.
Will you witness history unfold?
In recent years, the name of African leader Ibrahim Traoré has surged across global conversations with an intensity rarely seen for any modern statesman, and his rise has captivated millions who follow political shifts, revolutionary leadership, and the reawakening of African identity. Across social media platforms, people from every corner of the world have encountered his images, his calm yet fierce gaze, his military uniform symbolizing resilience, and his speeches that echo the pain, pride, and determination of an entire continent. After decades in which Africa grappled with political instability, foreign interference, and leadership crises, a figure finally emerged who seemed to embody the long-awaited defiance, courage, and independent spirit the continent had been yearning for. Ibrahim Traoré, the young military captain who unexpectedly became the president of Burkina Faso, is not merely raising his voice for African rights, he is openly confronting the global forces that have long influenced African affairs. His criticism of countries like the United States, Britain, and France, nations historically known for their deep involvement in African geopolitics, has positioned him as a fearless challenger of the status quo. This stance caught the attention of powerful leaders worldwide, including Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, who remarked in admiration that Ibrahim Traoré may soon rise as one of the strongest leaders in the Muslim world. Putin's words carry weight, for he is a figure deeply immersed in global power dynamics, and the fact that he views Traoré as a rising force speaks volumes about the young African leader's growing influence. Meanwhile, on social networks, people have gone even further, drawing comparisons between Traoré and Salahuddin Ayyubi, the legendary Muslim commander revered for his bravery, honor, and leadership during the Crusades. Such comparisons do not arise out of exaggeration, but from the symbolic message Traoré represents, a revival of dignity, resistance, and unity among oppressed communities. His leadership became especially noticeable the moment he took power. One of his first and boldest decisions was expelling the French military presence from Burkina Faso, a move that stunned the international community because France had maintained strong political and military ties in the region for decades. Soon afterward, Traoré took a firm stand regarding the crisis in Gaza, openly criticizing Israel's actions and the Western nations that supported them, showcasing a moral stance rarely seen from African heads of state in recent times. But Traoré's identity is not only political, it is deeply personal. he proudly identifies with his African heritage and speaks openly about being connected to the lineage of Hazrat Bilal al-Habashi, the revered companion of the Prophet Muhammad, known for his courage, unshakable faith, and powerful voice that historically symbolized freedom for the oppressed. By acknowledging this spiritual lineage, Traore sends a powerful message to Muslims around the world that the global Muslim community is not alone, not abandoned, and certainly not without leaders willing to sacrifice for justice. This sentiment, paired with his visible actions, is why many believe he may one day become one of the strongest unifying figures for Muslims globally. To understand the full arc of Ibrahim Traoré's journey, one must travel back in time, back to the roots that shaped him long before he became a revolutionary symbol. He was born in 1988, nearly 36 years ago, in the humble village of Kira, located in Burkina Faso, into a modest middle-class family that valued discipline, hard work, and integrity. From an early age, he possessed an unusual passion for military life. While other children played without purpose, Traoré's fascination centered on uniforms, bravery, and the idea of protecting one's homeland. This passion matured rapidly, and as soon as he was old enough, he joined the Burkinabese army. His early years in the military were marked not only by physical rigor, but by a developing sense of responsibility, patriotism, and empathy for his people. Over time, he became part of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, a conflict-torn region where extremist groups, political instability, and humanitarian crises had put millions at risk. During his mission, Traoré earned the respect of international commanders and fellow soldiers because of his unmatched courage and strategic clarity. Whether navigating dangerous terrain, rescuing civilians, or coordinating operations under pressure, he demonstrated a natural leadership capacity that set him apart from most officers of his age. These qualities soon caught global attention, leading analysts and senior officials to rank him among the most promising and visionary young military leaders of his generation. But what made him truly exceptional was not just military skill. It was his compassion for ordinary Africans, his refusal to be manipulated by foreign influences, and his determination to restore dignity to a continent long overshadowed by exploitation. His path from a quiet village to international recognition is not merely a story of personal ambition. It is the story of a young man who understood the weight of history on his people and decided to confront it head-on. And as we move deeper into this report, we will unravel not only how this journey shaped him into the man he is today, but also why many experts believe that within the next few years, Ibrahim Traoré may become one of the most influential and powerful leaders in the entire Muslim world.
But Traoré's journey toward national leadership did not end with his service or international respect. It took a dramatic and history-shaping turn in 2022, a year that completely altered the trajectory of his life and the future of Burkina Faso. That year, destiny came crashing upon him with an intensity that transformed him overnight from a disciplined military captain into the central figure of a political storm that would echo far beyond West Africa. In September 2022, Ibrahim Traoré, along with a loyal group of fellow soldiers who shared his frustration, conviction, and sense of duty, executed a decisive coup and overthrew the interim president, Paul-Henri Damiba, who had been in power after the previous political upheaval. This bold action was not the impulsive rebellion of an ambitious officer, rather it emerged from deep national desperation. And so, at just 34 years of age, Traoré found himself stepping into the presidency, the youngest head of state in the world at that time. But this raises an indispensable question. Why did this coup happen? What compelled a young officer with international credentials and a promising career to risk everything and seize control of the government? To answer that, one must understand the dire state of Burkina Faso before he took charge. The nation, located in West Africa, may appear small on the world map, but the scale of suffering within its borders had become immense. For years, Burkina Faso had been engulfed by extremist violence linked to groups aligned with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Villages were burned, schools shut down, families displaced, and the countryside became a battleground where innocent civilians found themselves trapped between militants and a struggling government incapable of protecting them. According to various estimates, between 2020 and 2022, nearly 4,000 people were killed in terrorist attacks, while almost 2 million citizens were forced to flee their homes due to relentless fear, insecurity, and chaos. The humanitarian crisis grew so severe that many international observers labeled Burkina Faso as one of the world's most rapidly deteriorating conflict zones. By 2022, when Damiba was in charge, the situation had reached a breaking point. People spilled into the streets, protesting relentlessly because the government had failed to curb terrorism, reduce poverty, or create stable employment for the young population. The frustration was not merely political, it was existential. The nation felt as though it was collapsing from within. And amid that collapse, Traore saw something that many leaders failed to see: the possibility of revival if someone dared to act decisively. Realizing that passive leadership meant certain national destruction, he stepped forward. He promised his people not only a fierce war against terrorism, but also liberation from the foreign powers that had deeply entrenched themselves within the country. Yet this mission was far from simple. Burkina Faso, like several former colonies in Francophone Africa, had long been under the influence of France. Though officially independent, the country's most valuable natural resource, its gold, remained under substantial French control. France profited immensely from these resources, earning the lion's share, while Burkina Faso, the rightful owner of the land, received barely 10% of the wealth extracted from its soil. This exploitative arrangement had festered for decades, undermining national growth and depriving the people of prosperity. When Traore came to power, he did not hesitate. One of his first and boldest acts was confronting this deeply rooted imbalance. He ordered the complete withdrawal of the French military from Burkina Faso, a move unthinkable for many African nations that had been politically dependent on France for years. The French army, which had maintained a strong presence under the justification of fighting terrorism, was suddenly told to pack up and leave. And France, being one of the world's powerful nations with long-standing geopolitical interests, was not expected to retreat quietly. But Traore made his intentions brutally clear. If France refused to withdraw peacefully, he was fully prepared for military confrontation. His message was not just political, it was symbolic, a declaration that Burkina Faso would no longer be treated as a subordinate, no longer exploited, no longer silenced. In that moment, a 34-year-old soldier president stood up against one of the largest powers in the world and proclaimed that his nation's dignity, sovereignty, and natural wealth were not negotiable. This is the decision that made global analysts, African citizens, and even rival world leaders realize that Ibrahim Traoré was not just another head of state. He was becoming the embodiment of a larger continental awakening. Following the dramatic assertion of Burkina Faso's sovereignty and the decisive removal of foreign military forces, the geopolitical chessboard shifted rapidly, and France's response became a focal point in the unfolding story. It is widely reported that President Emmanuel Macron of France, recognizing the potential consequences of a direct confrontation with Traoré's disciplined and loyal army, chose to avoid entanglement and withdrew French troops peacefully. This strategic retreat reflected both France's reluctance to escalate military conflict in West Africa and a recognition of Traoré's growing influence and resolve. But as soon as the French forces departed, Traoré understood that defending Burkina Faso's independence and pursuing his vision for the nation would inevitably involve confronting not just local threats, but also the political and economic pressures imposed by global powers like the United States and Britain. Seeking to balance the geopolitical scales, he extended a diplomatic hand toward Russia, forging ties with President Vladimir Putin. The relationship quickly evolved into a partnership of strategic significance, with Putin publicly acknowledging Traore as a rising leader destined for greatness in the coming years. Beyond diplomatic recognition, Russia provided Burkina Faso with advanced military equipment, bolstering its defense capabilities and solidifying the nation as a strategic partner in the region. What sets Ibrahim Traoré apart and elevates his profile across Africa is not only his military and political acumen, but his unwavering commitment to African self-determination. He openly denounces centuries of exploitation by Western powers, emphasizing that Africa's vast natural wealth, its gold, uranium, and other resources, belongs to its people, not to foreign entities. His message resonates deeply with the youth across the continent, who see in him a leader willing to reclaim dignity, justice, and economic sovereignty for Africa. Since assuming power, he has continued to assert Burkina Faso's independent voice on the international stage, openly criticizing Israel, Britain, and the United States for policies he perceives as unjust or aggressive, and supporting efforts by nations such as South Africa to hold powerful countries accountable through international institutions like the International Court of Justice. In every global forum, his stance is consistent, principled, and unwavering. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of Traoré's leadership lies in his personal and symbolic connection to history. By publicly declaring his lineage from Hazrat Bilal al-Habashi, the revered companion of the Prophet Muhammad, Traoré situates himself not only as a political figure, but as a spiritual and cultural symbol. He emphasizes that the African Muslim community is not orphaned, reminding people that they have leaders who embody courage, faith, and dignity. This declaration has dramatically amplified his influence among Muslims worldwide, positioning him as a figure of hope, resilience, and inspiration. Observers have gone so far as to draw parallels between Traore and Salahuddin Ayyubi, the legendary historical leader celebrated for his justice, strategic brilliance, and unwavering commitment to his people. While the future remains unwritten, the trajectory Traore has established suggests the emergence of a leader whose impact could be felt not just in Burkina Faso, but across Africa and the broader Muslim world. History has witnessed figures like Saddam Hussein, whose fame and power expanded rapidly, yet eventually waned. Traore's challenge will be to sustain influence while navigating the complex realities of modern geopolitics. As citizens, analysts, and observers reflect on Ibrahim Traoré's rise, it is clear that his story is not merely about political power, but about the reclamation of national dignity, cultural identity, and continental pride. His leadership embodies the potential of youth-led transformation, the assertion of independence in the face of global pressures, and the moral courage to defend both his people and the principles he values. His journey continues to unfold, and the coming years will determine the full extent of his legacy. Meanwhile, the world watches, the African youth draws inspiration, and the Muslim community witnesses a leader who speaks boldly and acts decisively. This is the story of Ibrahim Traoré, a story of courage, vision, and an unyielding commitment to justice.